thank you very much for joining today's webinar on investment and crowdfunding to grow your business. As I said, my name is Alistair Trail, and I am the project manager for the Food and Drink TechHUB Business Support Service, and I work for SAC Consulting, and we're delivering this service which provides business support, technical advice, and events. A growing network of food and drink businesses and producers and supply chain businesses, so doing events, workshops, and so forth to help grow food and drink businesses in the Highlands. So we're pleased today to introduce Alex McDonald from North Point Distillery, who's going to be presenting on investment and crowdfunding to grow their business and how they went through that journey. So just to give you a very quick overview before I pass on to Alex of the Food and Drink TechHUB Business Support Service. So this is a 3-year project to work with 300 food and drink businesses in the Highland Council area. The project delivery includes supporting business develop their growth plans and facilitating and brokering specialist technical support. Also trying to raise awareness and increase implementation of new technologies and opportunities such as digital and automation. A key part we're trying to look at is to develop collaboration between public sector, businesses and academia to deliver innovation and then projects that benefit the wider food and drink sector in the Highlands. And also we'll be trying to get insights into what businesses require from the physical tech hub, which is currently being developed in Allness, just outside Inverness. And this physical tech hub will offer development kitchens, upscaling facilities, packaging areas, and also offer areas for collaboration, meetings, and so forth. And that hopefully will be operational in 2024. So these are the areas that we're working in at the moment and we'll work with in the future over the next 3 years. So the things like product development, prototype testing and scaling up, offering advice on packaging and product labeling. We had our packaging workshop just before Christmas, which was very well attended. We're doing food safety and shelf life nutritional analysis work, sustainability, low carbon, waste management, net zero, offering advice on branding, marketing, business planning, e-commerce, online sales, and also more technical things like equipment specification, troubleshooting, factory layout. For more information on all the things that we're doing at the Tech Hub, you can visit the Tech Hub website, which is shown there. And that's also where you can register your interest in the program and find out about the events and the upcoming applications for one-to-one and common interest group support that we're delivering over the next few months. So this is how we're delivering support. So anybody who registers on the website receives a support call and signposting service. So this is a 30-minute, 45-minute chat with one of our specialists to talk about your business, what your aims and objectives are, and how we can help you guys in the short term, be that through general support or signposting. We're doing a number of technical networking workshops. So these are a combination of face-to-face, online, and today's webinar. And we're also doing insights and best practice. We're now doing a monthly podcast. The first podcast came out last month, and we're recording podcast 2 end of this month. We're also doing some videos and infographics. And then the main support that we're delivering is innovation clinics, which is sessions where companies can attend a 20-minute session online with a panel of experts. They can supply some questions to the panel beforehand in a certain theme or area, and then the panel will do some research and give some quick, insightful, and helpful tints in that 20-minute session. We're doing common interest groups, which is bringing together businesses from the same area, same subsector, or have the same issue, be that packaging, trying to get them together to work collaboratively to try and overcome these talent challenges. And also intensive one-to-one support, where you'll get support from one of our experts who'll work with you to overcome a particular challenge, and we'll also be delivering some learning journeys, which will be visits to businesses to share best practice. So this is the plan for today. So that's my introduction. So I'll then be passing on to Alex, who's going to be from North Point Distillery, who's going to be talking about the main topic of today, which is investment and crowdfunding to grow your business. We'll then have questions and answers. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat function during the session, and we can ask them at the end. Or at the end, we'll just put you can put your microphone on, and we'll have a chat, and you can ask some questions that way. And then for the last 5 minutes, I'll give an overview and tell you about some of the upcoming support that's available. So thank you very much. I will stop sharing my screen. and I'll pass on to Alex, who will then take his section away. So over to you, Alex.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alistair. Can everyone hear me all right? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Fantastic, great. And everyone can see my screen, I'm hoping as well. Okay, perfect. So thanks very much for having me on, Alistair. It's always good to talk to folk about kind of investment and how we can approach these things. Now, you will notice the second name is on here, Struan Mackey. Unfortunately, my co-founder is a little bit ill today, so I'll be soloing this session. So if we go over some general topics that we're going to today, obviously start off with general points, move through crowdfunding, and then we're going to be going through a couple of different kind of avenues of investment that you could be looking through in your business, as well as some tools, some terminology, and then finally a Q&A at the end. Just a little bit about myself before we get in. So my background's not at all in food and drink, albeit I've been running a distillery and a founder of a distillery for the last 2 years. My background is primarily actually in being a sales director in a number of different fast growth tech startups out of London and internationally, specifically with a focus within cybersecurity, defense, and military. So my background is primarily around growing a very small company, both in headcount and recurring revenue, and then feeding off of that and going into larger investment raises, such as large seed raises into Series A, Series B, Series C, as well as I've been a member of a number of exits as well. So have kind of seen the full gamut of investments and how it works in a lot of different startups. And so happy to kind of provide some of the insight that I've seen, some of the do's, the don'ts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So before seeking investment, the thing that I always tell folks to do is figure out if you really want to do what you're thinking about getting investment for. Sounds obviously slightly like a no-brainer, but a lot of people walk into this thinking that they want to do something. They try and go and get investment. Sometimes they're successful in it, and then they realize, hold on a second, I actually don't really enjoy this idea very much. And now you are effectively beholden to your shareholders. So that is something that I always recommend before you start anything, is really understand what is your position. Beyond that, you should always define your concept and your value. That means really coming to terms with your business model, in which industry you're operating, and how it brings value, whether it be through your service or your product. Those are your two main core tenets in how you need to be operating moving forward. The second, and by far is the most important, is creating a refined business plan. Now, a lot of people would say create a business plan. That's well and good, but you need to be the harshest critic to your own business plan out there. If you cannot be a harsh critic, find someone that well and truly does not believe in your idea. And I know that sounds hilarious, but find your friend that just thinks, Alex, that's the worst idea you've ever come up with. You shouldn't do it. You're going to be homeless within a year. All these kind of horrific things that they'll say to you. That is the person that should be reviewing your business plan. Because by the end of it, if you cannot convince them that this is a good idea, quite frankly, you probably shouldn't be doing that business. What this also means is revise, consistently put it through iterations. This might sound like a bit of a blag, but Struan and I spent about 4.5 months writing our business plan. Now that sounds ridiculous, but it's because we were going after a certain specific type of investor that knew their investment, that knew high risk capital. And what we needed to do is have a very refined business plan. So that means we went through about 80 different iterations. At one point, our business plan was about 115 pages of pure text, to which then we edited it down to 80. And then we had an advisor to our business that said, that's fantastic. It's an 80-page business plan. That's great. Now make it 40. And being able to kind of compress all that information without making it just pure statistics, et cetera, really lets you not only understand your business, but understand your market, your sales processes, and your overall industry. So refined business plan, incredibly important. creating a minimal viable product. Ideally, if you can do this, whether it be through like an R&D test kitchen, kind of like Alistair said, within Highlands and Islands Food and Drink Tech Hub, that would be fantastic. But if you can even create up with a digital kind of version of your product, that is also fantastic. But bear in mind, a minimum viable product allows people to kind of get that door open, and you're not selling off of a PDF. Fourth, understand your compliance and your financials. Compliance means effectively all the legislation, everything about government, your labels, etc., all the kind of nitty gritty before you get into it. The more you can understand it, the less you'll have nasty surprises throughout the first kind of 6 months of launching, as well as your investors will kind of know your money's in safe hands because you're not breaking any rules or any laws. Understanding your financials is pretty clear. Understand where you get the money, where you get the money out, but also understanding the financials of your investment and being able to talk the lingo with your investors at every step and every point. And this is across every style of investment that I'll be talking about today. Then finally is be able to concisely pitch your concept. Sometimes really harsh investors will give you 5 to 10 minutes, and they will pretty much make up their decision within 45 seconds. It sounds horrific. It's not a fair world that we live in, but unfortunately, that's what you get. If you cannot pitch your concept in that kind of 5-minute window, you really don't understand your minimum viable plan. You don't understand your product. You don't understand your industry. So, pardon the pun, being a distillery, but you need to distill your message down to its purest core form and be able to deliver that in a very concise manner. Okay, so you've decided that you've got a good business, you like what you're doing, and you want to figure it out. So the first avenue that you can go down is crowdfunding. And there's primarily 4 types of crowdfunding. So you have donation, reward, equity, and debt. As Alistair intimated, this will be recorded. So if you guys want, please go back and look at some more of the fine-tuned notes. I'm going to be going over this in more of a kind of glossary term. So crowdfunding is, as I said, divided into these 4 main groups. I would typically be focusing on equity and debt crowdfunding as the main avenues. The reason for this being is donation crowdfunding is typically for non-for-profits. So if you're a charity, definitely dial in on that, understand where you can get your money from. But this is really not for a business. The next is reward crowdfunding. Now, this is really interesting because it allows you to kind of almost get that seed capital or even like pre-seed capital. So it's not even raising money yet, but effectively going out and giving your product for free or getting people to buy into your product and giving them some sort of reward, whether it be first come discount, whether it be free samples, or even more incentivization in like a club or a program moving forward. Reward crowdfunding is typically baked into what I'd call equity crowdfunding, but some people have reward crowdfunding singled out, especially when they're extremely early release. The next would be equity crowdfunding. This is the kind of granddaddy of it all. This is where you see the vast majority of it. This is your CrowdCube, this is Crowdfunder, this is GoFundMe, Kickstarter. Equity crowdfunding really is about connecting individual to company with an innovative or high-risk idea, and they're seeking capital, they're seeking the money to get that really off the ground, and individual takes part in it. Typically, it is a lower equity rate with a higher rate of return. And also the problem that you see with it is you have typically higher fee structures. So you're typically looking between sometimes 6 all the way up to 10% of total money raised goes to the platform that you're raising on. And that can be really, really rough, especially if you're raising, 100,000 pounds, you're seeing 10 grand go out the door right away. And that means that automatically you have to look at that financial status of what you're trying to raise and your idea and your industry and your concept and your launch timelines and weigh it against that kind of 10% fee. Finally is debt crowdfunding. Now, I typically see debt crowdfunding in 2 instances. The first is extremely high risk, capital intensive businesses like a distillery, albeit we haven't done debt crowdfunding, but that's just because most investors would say, well, there's so many assets, there's so many personnel needed, it's really hard to launch, and then there's high barriers of entry. I don't want to give you equity. I'll loan you effectively money at a relatively robust interest rate, typically over a 3 to 5 year period, and we'll see how you get on. The next that you'd see out of crowdfunding is what I'd call soon to be drowning. So these are the companies that have been wading water for probably 2 years, and they're about to kind of go underneath the surface, and they're saying, I just need this capital to get in. I don't really care if it's at 20% APR. So that's where you typically see debt crowdfunding, albeit if you can leverage it and amortize it well with assets, for example, on your balance sheet, debt crowdfunding is not the worst option to go through. So we've obviously covered crowdfunding, and we'll talk a little bit about it later as well. But crowdfunding is, as I'd say here, I'll just go back for a second. Crowdfunding is kind of a very general kind of platform. The biggest drawback for me, actually, in crowdfunding, just to be very clear, is how public it is. It means your message, your product, your innovation is all out in the domain, and you haven't launched anything. And that means also you can see if an idea has done really well. So if it's done 100% of its funding, or even if it's gone above 125, 130% of this total funding cap, which is great. That gives you a lot of credence that you're doing the right things. However, the opposite is also true. If you hit like 65% or 60% or even lower of your total funding necessity, it does not look good. And then trying to go to an individual investor next after that, like not going crowdfunding, maybe going to an angel investor, the first thing they're going to look at is see if you are on a crowdfunding website and if you met your cap. If you didn't, they're going to go, well, these people didn't believe you. Why should I? So that's something just to be very, very aware of. Everything you do is public, and you will be held against that. The next, SEIS and EIS. So these are basically small enterprise investment schemes that are effectively UK government tax incentive investment schemes for innovation. These are a way to go collect individual investors into your business without having to go make it public. But what this was really driven out of, and it was kind of coming out of the 2010s into the early teens of 2014, 2013, the UK government really wanted to kickstart capital investment from individuals into small businesses that high risk, and they just effectively want to incentivize that with tax benefits. So SEIS and EIS are inherently linked because they're all part of the same program of advanced assurance, but they're inherently different because they're on different tiers. So just to give you an idea of how popular it is, just in 2020 to 2021, roughly 6,000 companies used SEIS and EIS to raise money, and of that, 1.8 billion total was raised. So obviously quite a popular system. So for SEIS, so Seed Enterprise Investment Schemes, this is effectively like true startup capital. This is when you're very, very small, you're trading with less than kind of 200,000, 250,000 pounds in pocket, and you don't have a lot of full-time employees. And this is where you get the max amount of tax incentives as an investor. So as an investor, you can get up to 50% of your investment back as a tax incentive in the same trading year or the same fiscal year. And then what you also get is a capital gains tax allowance. So basically, if you hold that equity after 3 years, you can effectively wipe off your capital gains allowance for selling that equity, which is, you'd be surprised how many people don't get sold on the 50% tax back. They get sold on the capital gains protection, because that's effectively saying, if I go skyrocket and you have 2% of my company and that valuation 10 times, let's say, you invested at £2,000, you got 10 times, you got £20,000, that £18,000 of tax now has capital gains tax protection on it, which is a massive, massive incentive for a lot of investors. Now, SEIS, I've actually done this a couple of times, specifically most recently with the distillery. This is really, really a great program, super easy to manage your way through. And I'll give you guys a couple of portals that we've used with SEIS. But one thing that you need to be aware of is you are typically looking at investors that are used to looking at other SEIS opportunities. And it can only be for UK-based taxpayers. So you cannot get any international investment through SEIS. So those are the kind of two main parts. But if you look at the eligibility criteria, it's relatively kind of vague and general, but as I said, there's some more tools that I can show you later that will show you the nitty gritty of SEIS. But strongly recommend this one if you want to not go crowdfunding, you want to be private, and you want kind of your intimate investors into this. SEIS is definitely the route. Now, the kind of older sibling to SEIS is EIS, so the Enterprise Investment Scheme. This is effectively, as soon as you hit your SEIS cap of £250,000 raised, you automatically get booted into the EIS scheme. EIS, the tax incentivization is only 30%, so that's down from 50% at SEIS. And you still get the capital gains tax after the 3 years of holding equity, but really you don't get the same kind of tax leveraging. But that's also because at this point, the EIS is for a little bit more of a mature company. So EIS, as you can see, all the kind of eligibility has gone up. So now instead of like £200,000 of gross assets, you're looking at £15 million. Instead of 25 employees, you're now looking at 250 full-time employees. And you start getting into some quite technical things like public companies and qualifying subsidiaries. Not that you really need to know about now, but EIS is massively beneficial for continuing that SEIS success, saying you've hit your cap in SEIS, I've maxed out the raise, now I'm into EIS, and this is where you typically look at your year 2, year 3 scale up, and that's where you're looking at least kind of getting your 25 to 35% increase in revenue, increase in profits, and really trying to drive that growth into the company. So we're currently actually in our EIS stage because quite frankly, there's no real time limit as long as you're kind of continually looking to scale, albeit some companies do their SEIS, they go great, bang, and then they'll wait kind of a year and a half, 2 years, then they'll do their EIS as one raise, bang, and get it done. The important thing to note is just making sure that your revenues and your gross assets are within the eligibility criteria. Sometimes there is eligibility into the trades that you're allowed to do as SEIS. So for example, I know they won't allow like tobacco companies to ever do it, but certainly they allowed an alcohol company. So the next one that I focused on a lot, and this is kind of where my specialty is international investment. As much as I specialize in it, this is the one I hate the most because this is the one that you have to do the heaviest lifting for potentially the littlest return and the most questions and the most demanding shareholders. So this is going out to private individuals and effectively asking for foreign direct investment, or FDI, saying, can you please invest into my distillery or my food service or my kitchen or my restaurant? But, you have to get on a plane to come see it. And this is where it becomes very, very difficult because you are effectively selling something relatively intangible to them. And it becomes very, very much on a trust exercise. So that's why I always say it's the hardest form of investment. So the first thing I always say is leverage your international network. It's a very, very fancy way of saying, do you have friends abroad? And do they have money or do they know people with money? And if they do, could they connect them to you? You need to certainly be selling a little bit more. And this is going to sound ridiculous. And forgive me, everyone, for a Canadian saying this to a bunch of, I think, Scottish people, but you're going to have to be a little bit more Tartans and Loch Ness and kind of the Highland cow mantra and really sell Scotland a little bit more. When you go out to international investors, they want that slice of Scotland. They want the rain and the castles and the bagpipes and all that. And that's the dream that you effectively have to sell in international investment. So I can speak anecdotally, the distillery has been very, very successful in international investment. We've received about 65% of our total investment from international investors. Now, I will say that's primarily because I am Canadian. I do have really, really quite nice connections into North America. But I also knew where I was selling, and I also knew how much my network was interested in a distillery. So that is also understanding your international connections could be great, but maybe they're not interested in, for example, your biscuit business. Maybe they're interested in something else. The part of international investment does include some crowdfunding. So there are crowdfunding websites that focus specifically on international investors. And there are also angel investment networks. One thing that I would watch out for, angel investors can both be domestic and international. One thing I always say about angel investors is they're great, but they can very, very quickly become devil investors as well, because they might be asking for extremely high rates of equity based off of valuations. So you might say 10% of my company is £2,000, so I'm valued at £20,000 total. And they say, that's great, but I want 10% of your company for £1,500 at the same valuation. So really they want a larger chunk for a smaller price. And that's because angel investors really understand that this is their prime business. They know how to flip capital, and they know how to get it into different businesses. The next is international funding avenues, as well as accelerator opportunities. So there is a lot of international funds that are out there. You just have to be aware of them. If you even look at it, I mean, some international funding opportunities are in very odd places. For example, I, in a past life, participated in a Go Start fund from Luxembourg, which actually was the highest capital-driven accelerator in the field at that point. And that's because Luxembourg has amazing tax incentives, but it's not a very, very fun place to go visit or live for a couple months. So I wouldn't recommend it. But just be aware that some international funding does have a lot of stipulations. You will probably see a fair amount at the moment. The hotspots for it are really around the Middle East and around Asia, specifically within Singapore. Singapore is a massive driver with international funding opportunities, and they also love to run their accelerators off of them. Now, accelerators, fantastic ways of getting international investment. They will ask for an arm and a leg. You're going to be selling what I call selling the farm to keep the animals in some respects, giving a lot of your company away. But what you're giving it to is potentially a network of advisors, leaders, and managers that can all help your business grow. So accelerator, the hint is kind of there. It is effectively a commune of different companies that come together, and they're effectively forcibly pushed into scaling and growth. And this is through networks, connections, meetings, HR help, finance help, marketing help, social media help, etc. I've been through about 12 accelerators. I can say they make you age really, really quickly. Like they make you age like milk in the desert kind of thing. But if you can make your way through them, they're really, really good. So funnily enough, Struan Mackey, my co-founder, who isn't here, I actually met him at an accelerator. And we were actually sitting on kind of opposite side of the table because he was one of the individuals helping run the accelerator, and I was accompanied on the accelerator. So they can be fantastic networking opportunities. Obviously, that accelerator led to me starting a distillery, which I don't know if I would thank him or kind of not thank him for that. But it's been certainly a really, really interesting opportunity. And the networks you can build out of accelerators are fantastic. The next one is government programs. Scotland is incredibly unique in some respects with how many government programs it likes to put out. So whether you're talking about Highlands and Islands Enterprise or Food and Drink TechHUB, whether you're talking about North Highland Regeneration Fund, different chambers of commerce, you can also be even talking about Department of International Trade or Scott government in general. We've been a part of about 8 or 9 programs since the distillery founded in the last 2 years. And these programs are vital as a form of kind of not only international investment, but also domestic investment that can really accelerate your growth through the kind of initial preliminary stages. So I know there's a lot on this slide. I'll probably be as brief as I can on each one of those. So some of the tools that I think you should probably be using right now. The first is Highlands and Islands Food and Drink Tech Hub. And this is not even me kind of sucking up to Alistair here. I actually do think Highlands and Islands do provide a fantastic service. Make sure that if you can become account managed as soon as possible, that is your number one goal. Because as soon as you're account managed by Highlands and Islands, you are normally assigned an account manager, and those individuals make or break your business. And we have an absolutely fantastic team up here. So we have Keith Muir and Hillary Budge. I know Hillary, even though we've had some of our technical problems historically with emails, she's been absolutely an amazing resource for us, not only seeking out further funding opportunities, but also just keeping us tapped into what's going on at Highlands and Islands Enterprise and understanding effectively where this microcosm of business and commerce is going. The next is raising platforms. For example, Seed Legals. We strongly recommend Seed Legals as a raising platform, especially if you're going through SEIS or EIS investment. Roughly about 1/3 of all SEIS and EIS investment is done on Seed Legals, and it is fantastic. It is like your one-stop shop for compliance, governance, for your HR, for even co-founder agreements, but also for all your shareholder documentation. It is just absolutely fantastic, and it will save you an astronomical amount of legal fees. Because if you go for a private raise and you use a lawyer, you might as well just give up, as I said, almost similar to the crowdfunding, between 6 to 10% of your raise automatically, and that's being very, very kind. Crowdfunding platforms that you should definitely be using are Crowdfood, Kickstarter, GoFundMe, and Crowdfunder. My personal favorite is Crowdcubed, just because it's got that kind of slightly lower platform rate, and it gives a little bit more of a robust experience to both the raiser and the investor. So certainly would recommend Crowdcubed. I always have to recommend the local Chamber of Commerce. Sometimes people think that style or that kind of entity or organization is going the way of the dodo. I would say it's the exact opposite. A lot of these entities are effectively an amalgamation of extremely experienced business owners and founders. And these are the people that you should be tapping into your network, because they will be fundamentally either your biggest champions or the people that will push your idea to be refined more and more. So I know we're a part of Caithness Chamber of Commerce. I vehemently believe in it because it's been fantastic for connecting us into HR portals, and even allowing us to maybe hire some really, really great employees. So really believe in the local Chamber of Commerce. The next is a harsh lesson that I've learned a couple of times through a couple different businesses. Get a lawyer to review your IP and protections. That is massively, massively important. The reason for that is if you don't have your trademarking, if you don't have your intellectual property kind of signed in, if you don't have protections on your website, for example, you can have the best idea in the world. You could be going all the way through it. And if you have no protections, someone with enough capital, enough money, and enough manpower effectively will just come along. Is valuation tools. Valuation tools are incredibly useful to understand more technical things like discounted cash flows and your gearing ratios, etc. It's just all very, very simple of understanding what the worth of your company is. So for example, if you are pre-money, also known as like kind of pre-trading, and you say you're pre-money worth £1 million, that is where you're going to raise your equity against. And that's what you have to defend. And that number is what you really have to stick by. So understanding your valuation is a core foundation before you seek any investment. Whether it be crowdfunding, SEIS, or international. So these are the 4 tools that I think are, really helped us lay the foundation of what we're doing. The first is Investopedia. I always like to say I'm a sales guy, not a finance guy, which means I'm fundamentally an idiot when it comes to a lot of the kind of back end Excel spreadsheets and management. But I thought Investopedia really allowed me to be able to speak the lingo, understand more kind of larger financial terminology regarding investment. And it's been a resource that I've used for years. And it's really, really helped me first appear like I know what I was talking about, and then eventually actually know what I was talking about. So I really believe Investopedia is something to look into. And the next is Crunchbase. It's a crowdsourced investment information platform. It's really, really good if you know your industry relatively well, or you're trying to do your fact finding into your industry, see your competitors and look at their analysis and see how much they've raised and see what the founders are, what kind of information they are. Now, Crunchbase is something I always say is really good for other people to go populate their sites on. I don't really like doing it for myself. And Crunchbase is also self-populated by their own developers. So there's 2 sides to it. I always like to be quite private, but it's very, very good to go get other people's information. The third, and once again, I can't stress this enough, is Seed Legals. Seed Legals is a fantastic raising platform that allows you to minimize fee structures and maximize output and really leverage your shareholders, HR functions, and business management tools on one platform. Last but not least is a financial tool called Brix, B-R-I-X-X. Really, really good for the modeling process. So when you're first starting a business, nothing is worse than doing financial modeling, especially if some investors are asking you for 3-year modeling and you're like, whoa, how the hell am I supposed to do that? I don't know what I'm doing next week. But Brix allows you to really say, okay, well, this is the revenue basis. This is how much I think I'll be growing by. This is my returns rate. This is kind of where our capital is going into. And this is why that investment matters, as well as this is the company that we think we're going to be in about 3 years. So it's relatively straightforward, albeit it does take some tinkering with. I always recommend trying to get that tool in front of someone that has a really good finance background first and say, like, can you show me it? And then they can take you through it. And then that's where you can probably get the most growth out of it. But if I can use it, I'm sure that all of you can as well. So really, those are the 4 tools that we used. As I said before, investment is kind of, it is dark arts. Its beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Part of my French, it is just a sprinkling of bullshit. But all these things together, you really just have to be able to convey business, convey concept, convey product, understand your customer, understand your industry. But at the end of the day, you're effectively saying to someone, this is my idea. This is how much I think it's worth. Do you think that as well? And that's the biggest hook, is being able to ask for investment is very, very difficult. You can have the best conversation, you can say all the amazing things, someone believes in your idea, but if you don't ask them for the money, that's just another great conversation you've had. So I always say everything leads up to the ask, and being able to ask is where you'll find the defining factor. So I'm just at about time, I think, Alistair. So should we open it up for questions?
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting and insightful presentation. Thank you. But also very confused. Well, for me, and a quite confusing landscape. So I think it's great to open it up to questions. If you do have a question, can you please just take yourself off mic, take your mic off mute, sorry, and ask away. So I'll open it up to the floor. Do we have any questions for Alex?
Hi, Alex.
Hey there.
So we're kind of at the stage now where we're going to be ready for investment this year, and it's really to help with like stock and marketing costs and just supporting getting into a major retailer. I was wondering about these. I'm really keen to export my products, and I was just wondering about the accelerator. Which international accelerator are you aware of? Because there was mention of accelerator opportunities, international ones, and I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about that and which ones that you thought were useful.
Yeah, so a lot of these accelerators are normally very industry specific. So I'd have to know if you're food or drink first. But what I would say as a general term, some accelerators that I found incredibly helpful. One that I wouldn't really class as an accelerator, but was a good program is Impact 30, which was the kind of 30 under 30. So I don't know if you're a part of that, Yvonne, but that is certainly a program I'd look at. I would certainly look at the Department of International Trade and Scott government do I'd call it an accelerator on export practices. And they select a certain amount of companies kind of on a rolling 6-month basis. And they actually put you through, you're kind of getting ready to export. So it is actually called the Ready to Export program. And that one was incredibly useful, albeit we had already started exporting by the time we joined the program. So it was a bit cart before horse. The next thing is it depends which markets you are wanting to go into. And this is, do you have any kind of expertise on which markets you're looking at?
Middle East and Australia, but Middle East initially.
Okay. So Middle East is a really, really interesting one. You're probably not going to find any kind of food and drink related accelerators there specifically targeted at Scotland. You will find that the British Commons will have a really interesting approach at potentially bringing in you for like trade days or even kind of your export trade shows, so where they'd invite you to go to the Middle East on their behalf. Having traded a lot in the Middle East previously, the two things I'd massively look out for are one, import and export controls. So how do you actually get your product to land on the ground safely and get to your customer and get paid on time? The paid on time is like the massive asterisk there, because you could have your product in the Middle East for 6 months and you have no money in your bank account. The second is have an agent in the Middle East that actually knows what they're doing. Agency is really a great way to kind of leverage into export markets, but they're going to be a hassle and they're going to cost money. So one thing I would say is if you can have any like letters of intent or marked notice that you have interest from that marketplace, like significant interest, and you can leverage that, that's what I'd go to an investor saying, maybe this is something that they could back and they get actually a payout. So that would be almost a combination of looking at almost like reward, crowdfunding / debt investment and saying like, if you give me this money and effectively back this deal, this is what the slice you could get off of it. And that could be almost like a short-term investment loan.
Okay, thank you. And I was just wondering with your investors that you did the SEIS with, how did you find them? I've had a few, like a couple of years ago, had a few investors approach me, and I don't know whether I just go and get back in touch with them. Obviously, I'll need to go through what you've gone over today and do like more of a tailored business plan for investment. But is there like, apart from, because I don't want to maybe do the crowdfunding because I'm wanting to be more private, but yeah. I mean, is there like almost not like a directory, but do you know what I mean? Is it just who you know for investment, or is there someone else that we can go to find investors that are looking for this types of food and drink?
I would look at angel investment networks. Sometimes those are pay to play, and they're as simple as Googling angel investment. A lot of angel investors will say which industries they're actually interested in, whether it be food and drink, automotive, manufacturing, cyber, etc. I will say, because you're going to them, it can be a bit like, oh, you've come to me, fantastic, but I want everything. So I always say be very, very careful with private investors. I think leveraging your own network, and when I say your own network, it's like your networks. Look at 4 degrees of separation. There's always a friend who has a friend who has a friend that somehow knows like Richard Branson or something. I know it sounds ridiculous, but you are always a couple of degrees separated from someone that is probably interested in your product, as long as you can convey that and you have the right kind of vouching from that personal connection, then you're golden. So what I'd say to those investors that you met a couple years ago, there's no time limit, there's no expiry date on connections. I'd get back in touch.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Looks like Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, from the food and drink side, if we're going down the angel investment groups, there's Equity Gap, TriCap, Apollo, and Mint Ventures that are targeting food and drink at the moment. And Mint Ventures is targeting women as well. So that might be an interesting one to look into. Elizabeth, do you have a question?
Hi there. Sorry, it was actually just to help Yvonne because we were on a programme a while ago, Thrive. Hello. And just regarding your export question, so I was on a preparing to export programme. I think it was about 6 weeks with SDI and Scottish Enterprise, and it's really a kind of whistle-stop tour of everything to do with exporting. It'll take you through your ORI number, all the things you need to do. You get partnered with a mentor, and that was really, really helpful to me. Yeah, I just thought I would share that with you, so it's more of a help.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Do we have any other questions? Take your mic off mute and just go for it.
Hello, Alex McDonald here. Thanks very much for that presentation. That was excellent. I really enjoyed it. I've just got a question about crowdfunding. We recently secured some grant funding for a new premises, and we were looking at the idea of maybe doing a crowdfunder more on the rewards based, partly for the marketing aspect of it, partly also for pre-sales of what will be, new products launched in the new premises. And so I was wondering, in terms of pricing for these kind of rewards-based crowdfunders, are you pricing it maybe above what you would normally sell the product for because, well, you're trying to raise some capital into the business? Are you selling it at a discount because, well, these people are supporting you to realize the project? Is there an angle for, how you tackle pricing structures for a rewards-based crowdfunder?
Yeah, so obviously this comes down onto your market segment, Callum, and where your product lies. But what I always say with regards to pricing, and it's unanimous across all things, whether it be technology or product, never discount your product. Always just try and add value. Now, the value can be if you're selling multiple units at a discounted rate, then that's technically adding value. Now, what I'd also say is if you can say, if you buy this product, your next purchase will come with a certain gift, or you'll be part of a club, or you'll have exclusive access to our next launches. These are all kind of add values. What I always think is difficult is if you discount your product, you are automatically teaching the customer basis, and you're teaching potentially even future investors that, one, you have more margin in your product than you typically probably want to say publicly, but also, two, you are also disclosing that you are a lot thirstier for revenue than you are for profit. And I always think that's a really difficult position to come back from, because once you say to the market, you bought my product for £25, and then 6 months later trying to sell it at 35, someone's like, well, I bought it for 25. Why would I buy it for 35? I've already bought it at 25. So I always think for that kind of reward style crowdfunding, Callum, I would certainly look at the adding value on your product rather than the discounting rate.
Brilliant. No, I appreciate that advice. Thank you very much.
No problem.
We've got plenty of time for one more question. Does anyone have a burning question they want to ask before we're done?
Hi, I just wanted to say something. I'm Katrina from Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and I just wanted to let folks know that there is actually what Alex was saying about the accelerator opportunities. We've got Pathfinder Accelerator, which is a 4-month business support program, and it is to help businesses to, accelerate a new product or to really, help with a particular aspect to their business. And it used to be focused specifically to life sciences, but now it's opened up to, yourselves. You could all apply. So please do bear that in mind. We could send the link out as well after this webinar or alongside the recording. And there's also Impact 30, as Alex was mentioning, which is a 12-month, so it's a longer business support, and it'll help, point out many different opportunities. I think, Callum, you've also benefited from that too. But Pathfinder Accelerator is a 4-month programme, so just to flag that up as well.
Okay, Katrina, thank you very much. Yeah, that's very useful. Thank you. So that just comes to the end of the session. So thank you very much for joining today. I just want to mention a couple of things that we have coming up in the TechHUB Business Support Service you might be interested in. So just to let you know that there is an innovation workshop happening on Friday this week at Lochran in Inverness at 9:30 till 12. So this is basically just an interactive workshop giving businesses an overview of advice, support and funding that's available around innovation that's relevant to the food and drink sector. So if you're looking to innovate your business, develop new innovative piece of equipment or technology, or collaborate with academic, a partner institution, or look for other partners in industry, then this workshop will probably be a great place to come along. We've got presentations from HI, which will talk about the stuff that was mentioned today, like Ready to Export program, Pathfinder Accelerator, that type of stuff. We'll have Interface talking about collaboration with the universities, knowledge transfer partnerships, how you can get larger projects with recent graduates, Innovate UK about becoming a part of bigger consortiums, and then some specific stuff to do with sensors through Census and through manufacturing with NMIS. So the workshop's also going to include a session led by Census, which is an interactive session which will provide a global perspective on some of the challenges and technology trends in the food and drink industry, and discuss how these could be met by the new TechHUB Food and Drink Centre, which is being built at the moment. So that should be a very interesting session. Still spaces available, so if you want to register and come along, please do. You can just scan that QR code with your phones now if you want, and you can get to the Eventbrite page as well. But I can share that with you after the meeting today. Other things that's happening at the moment, we've got bespoke or intensive one-to-one support available at the moment, so businesses can apply for support from a food and drink expert to help overcome specific challenge in your business. Expert will work with you closely and offer hands-on guidance and support to overcome a particular challenge. It might be looking at investment, it might be packaging, it might be anything to do with food safety, shelf life, could be equipment specification, it could be sustainability, low carbon, recipe development. So that's all available at the moment. And if you're interested in that, you can maybe send me an email and I can then get you set up on the My High system, and then you can apply to the support through the application process. So the other project that we've got going at the moment is common interest groups. So this is apply to receive support from a dedicated expert to help develop a collaborative group of businesses to overcome an ongoing challenge. So common interest groups provide businesses with the opportunity to collaborate with other like-minded entrepreneurs and businesses with support of a specialist facilitator. So we're looking to work with businesses maybe in the same food and drink subsector. So if you're all part of cheese or bakery, dairy, distillery, you can come together, or work in a similar geographical area in the Highlands, or have a similar issue to overcome or similar plans for growth. And then what we'll do is we can, if your application is successful, we'll allocate you that specialist facilitator who will arrange for external expertise, private sector, academia to help encourage new members to join the group and so forth. And then the facilitator will help develop a plan for going forward. So if you have an idea for a group or like to collaborate with our businesses, then please complete that short application form. But you don't have to be a member of a group or have contact any potential members to apply. Once you put the idea in and it's successful, then we will, as facilitators, will help find group members to take that opportunity forward. again, for instance, in that, there's a application form which is available online, and you can scan that QR code and you can go for that. Just to let you know, it's quite a short deadline. It's been up now for about 3-4 weeks, but the deadline actually for the support is the 24th of February, so Friday this week. So if you are interested, please do that now. Excuse me. The last thing to mention is that the first episode of the podcast is available. It's called Food and Drink Business Bites, and it's now live. Episode 1 is, as says, released, and that involves an interview with myself, just talking about the program and upcoming support. And also we hear from Flora and Rosie from Cafe Biagiotti and Biagiotti at Home about their experiences in accessing some of the support they've received from the business support service. So if you're interested in that, you can find that on usual platforms, listen to podcasts. You can also scan that QR code and you can listen to the chat there. We also have an event feedback form, which I'll be sending out to everyone later today, or probably as soon as we're done. So I'll send that out. So if you can fill that in, that would be fantastic. And just give us some information about other events we can be doing, how you found this event. So that would be great if you could do that. So that's the event finished for today. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks very much for Alex for a fantastic presentation. As I say, we'll be sending out an email probably straight after today with a feedback form. If you could click that, that'd be fantastic. I have recorded the session, so we'll be converting that into a recording and putting that on YouTube, and also be on the website of the TechHUB. So as soon as that's available, I'll send out another link and you can have that as well. And Alex, are you happy to share your slides and I'll maybe send them out as well? Is that possible?
Yeah, happy. And if anyone has any questions or anything, I have my contact details on the slides as well.
Fantastic. So thank you. That's just finished. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you found that useful, and we'll hope to see you at some of the other events and workshops that we're doing in the future. So thank you.